There's a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from never saying no. Not the exhaustion of doing too much. Something deeper than that. The exhaustion of living a life that was built around everyone else's needs, everyone else's timelines, everyone else's comfort, while yours waited. And if you have ever felt that kind of tired, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The kind where you wake up already depleted before the day has asked anything of you. The kind where you look at your schedule and feel a heaviness because almost nothing on it is actually for you. The kind where you have been so available to everyone around you for so long that you have genuinely lost track of what you actually want because you have not had the space to want anything for yourself in longer than you can remember. Most people who never learned to say no did not make that choice consciously. It got built into them. In childhood, in family systems, in relationships where saying yes was what kept the peace and saying no had consequences. Where being agreeable was rewarded and having limits was treated as selfishness. Where the message, spoken or unspoken, was that your needs mattered less than keeping everyone around you comfortable. And so you learned. You learned to say yes when you meant no. To smile when you were frustrated, to show up for everyone else while quietly putting yourself last and calling it being a good person. And it worked. In the short term, it worked very well. People liked you. People relied on you. People called you dependable and generous and easy to be around. But what nobody told you was what it was costing on the other side of the ledger. What was quietly accumulating every time you said yes when you meant no. What was being built up, slowly, invisibly, every time you swallowed the no and replaced it with a yes that came at your own expense. What was being built up was resentment. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that does not feel like anger. It feels like tiredness, like a low-level irritability you cannot fully explain, like a growing distance from the people you love because something in you knows they're taking more than they are giving and you have never said anything about it. That is what never saying no builds over time. Not a reputation for being kind, a quiet accumulation of unmet needs that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. The first cost is your time. Time is the one resource you cannot get back, and every yes you give to something that does not deserve it is a no to something that does. Things do not slow down for people who cannot say no. They speed up, because yes invites more yes. Every time you demonstrate that your time and energy are available without limit, more demands show up to fill that space. And the life you're going to get to eventually never arrives because the yeses never stopped long enough to make room for it. The second cost is your identity. When you spend long enough saying yes to things that are not aligned with who you actually are and what you actually value, you start to lose the thread of yourself. You become the person other people need you to be so consistently that the person you actually are starts to feel distant, unfamiliar, like something you used to know but have not checked in with in a long time. And that loss of self is one of the most disorienting things that can happen to a person because you cannot build a life that actually fits you if you have lost track of what you actually are. The third cost is your relationships. And this is the one that surprises people most. Because the assumption is that always saying yes makes you a better friend, a better partner, a better family member. That availability and agreeableness is what love looks like. But what actually happens in relationships where one person never says no is that the dynamic becomes unbalanced in a way that eventually poisons the relationship. The person who never says no starts to build resentment. The person who always receives the yes starts to lose respect for the one giving it. Not consciously, not because they are bad people, but because human beings instinctively value what has limits more than what has none. And a relationship that was supposed to be deepened by your constant yes slowly becomes one where you feel taken for granted and they feel vaguely uncomfortable without knowing why. Because no one told either of you that healthy relationships require both people to have limits. That love without limits is not actually love. It is a performance of love that burns out the performer and teaches the recipient that your needs do not matter. So how do you actually learn to say no when you've spent years building your identity around saying yes? Because I want to be honest about the fact that this is not as simple as just deciding to do it. The discomfort of saying no to someone who is used to hearing yes from you is real. The guilt is real. The fear of disappointing people, of being seen as selfish, of disrupting relationships that were built on your availability. All of that is real. And dismissing it does not help you actually change. The first thing that helps is understanding that saying no to the wrong things is saying yes to the right ones. Every no is a yes in disguise. When you say no to the commitment that does not serve you, you are saying yes to your own time. When you say no to the relationship that takes without giving, you're saying yes to your own energy. When you say no to the version of yourself that everyone else needs you to be, you are saying yes to the version that actually exists. Framing it that way does not remove the discomfort of the no, but it gives the no a purpose. And having a purpose makes it easier to deliver. The second thing is starting small. You do not have to say no to everything at once. You do not have to suddenly become a different person overnight. You just have to say no to one thing this week that you would normally have said yes to. One small thing. And notice what happens. Notice that the relationship does not end. Notice that the person adjusting to your limit is capable of handling it even if they are not immediately happy about it. Notice that the guilt fades faster than you expected. And then say no to another thing next week. The muscle of saying no gets built the same way every other muscle does. One rep at a time, slowly, with discomfort at first that decreases as the practice becomes familiar. The third thing is recognizing that the people who matter will respect your limits. And the people who do not respect your limits are revealing something important about how they see you. Someone who only values you when you are infinitely available to them does not value you. They value what you provide. And you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just for what you can give. Setting a limit is not just an act of self-protection. It is also a filter. It shows you clearly who actually sees you versus who has just been benefiting from your inability to say no. Here is what I want you to sit with at the end of this. Saying no is not selfish. It is necessary, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Because the version of you that never says no is not actually fully present in the relationships and commitments you're saying yes to. It is depleted, running on empty, going through the motions of showing up without having the actual resources to give anything real. The version of you that has learned to say no, that protects its time and energy with intention, is the version that can actually show up fully for the things and people that deserve it, that can give from a place of genuine abundance rather than forced obligation, that can be present instead of just available. God did not design you to be a resource for everyone else's life while yours waited indefinitely. You're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to have limits. You're allowed to say no to things that cost you more than they give you. That is not a failure of generosity. That is wisdom. And the people whose lives you are actually meant to impact, the ones who are supposed to receive the real version of you rather than the depleted one, need you to learn this. They need the version of you that has something left to give because you stopped giving everything to everyone. Say no. Start today. One thing, one limit, one small act of choosing yourself without apologizing for it. Sit with that.